I need you to listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to share was never meant to leave the inner circles I once served in. For years, I operated as a warlock in ritual spaces where calendars were not just dates, they were weapons. Specific days were marked, guarded, and feared. February 7th, 8th, and 9th were not ordinary days. They were known as release windows, moments when long standing financial assignments either locked in or collapsed completely. When I left that world, I didn't just walk away from rituals, I walked away with knowledge. Knowledge about how curses attach to finances, how delays are engineered, and how certain spiritual doors close without warning. These 3 days were always circled in red ink. Because if someone stayed spiritually alert during this window, decades of financial oppression could unravel overnight. I've seen business failures blamed on bad decisions when the real cause was a spiritual siphon placed years earlier. I've watched families work nonstop and still stay stuck because an invisible hand was draining increase before it arrived. And I've seen those same chains shatter when the timing shifted and the legal ground was lost. February 7, 8, and 9 are not about luck, they are about authority. These days expose which financial curses are still operating illegally in your life. The reason many believers never break free is not because they don't pray, it's because they pray outside of timing. And timing is everything in the spirit realm. Tonight, I'm not speaking as a former warlock to scare you. I'm speaking as someone who knows where the traps were set and exactly when they fail. Most people think financial curses come from obvious things: witchcraft attacks, spoken words, or jealousy. But the strongest financial curses were never dramatic, they were legal, quiet, slow. They attach through agreements, trauma, inheritance patterns, and unaddressed spiritual permissions. In the occult world, money is not just currency, it is energy with assignment. When someone experienced financial shock, betrayal, or humiliation, those moments were often used to anchor spiritual claims. The curse wasn't always placed intentionally. Sometimes it formed when pain went unresolved. February 7 through 9 were used to renew or terminate these claims. If a person gained spiritual clarity during this window, the curse lost its renewal rights. That's why distractions spike around these days: confusion, fatigue, emotional heaviness, all engineered to keep you unaware. If you felt unusually reflective about money, purpose, or your future during this time, that's not random. That's exposure. Let me tell you something the occult never admits publicly. When a financial curse breaks, chaos often comes first. People expect instant money, but what actually happens is movement. Stagnation breaks, old systems collapse. Relationships tied to limitation shift. You may notice unexpected expenses followed by unexpected provision, doors closing without explanation, a strong urge to clean, reorganize, or let go. These are not setbacks, they are evidence of transfer. When a curse breaks, it releases its grip abruptly, and the mind often panics before the spirit celebrates. If you felt a strange mix of fear and hope around finances lately, that's the fracture line forming. February 7, 8, and 9 sit in a spiritual overlap where old cycles lose authority and new permissions activate. In ritual language, this window was called the audit. Any curse not legally reinforced collapsed automatically. That's why no ritual was performed against believers during this period. The risk was too high. If the curse was exposed, it couldn't be reattached. This is why prayer during these days carries unusual weight. You are not begging, you are enforcing. Here's the warning most people never hear. Broken curses can be invited through agreement. Words like, I'll always struggle, money never stays, or this is just my life, are not emotional, they're contractual. During February 7, 9, silence is more powerful than complaints. Gratitude is stronger than fear. Alignment matters more than intensity. The enemy doesn't need power if you provide permission. You don't need rituals. You don't need objects. You need awareness. Acknowledge what no longer belongs to you. Renounce inherited limitation. Speak future provision, not past failure. Even one clear declaration during this window outweighs years of scattered prayer. This is not about striving, it's about standing. When a financial curse breaks, the nervous system often relaxes first. You may feel lighter without knowing why. Sleep may improve. Anxiety eases. That's because pressure you normalized is gone. Freedom doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it just lets you breathe again. The goal was never just to keep you poor, it was to keep you distracted. When finances stabilize, purpose surfaces. When fear leaves, clarity enters. That's why these days matter. Not because money is everything, but because limitation is. I've watched curses placed, and I've watched them panic when they lost authority. February 7, 8, and 9 are not magic days, they are truth days. What doesn't belong cannot stay. If you've made it this far, you were meant to hear this. Stay aligned, stay aware, and don't step back into what's already broken. Once a financial curse is broken, life does not instantly become perfect, and this is where many people misunderstand the process. In the occult, we knew that after a curse lost authority, the hardest phase began transition. This is the period where God restructures your financial flow and the enemy tries one last time to convince you that nothing changed. You may notice old income streams drying up. Projects you depended on may suddenly feel heavy or unproductive. This is not loss, it is detachment. Anything that was feeding you under limitation cannot follow you into expansion. When a curse breaks, God removes systems that were sustaining survival instead of growth. Emotionally, this phase can feel unsettling. You might question your decisions or feel tempted to return to familiar struggle because at least it was predictable. But understand this, peace often feels unfamiliar when you've lived under pressure for years. The absence of stress can feel like emptiness until purpose fills the space. Spiritually, your sensitivity increases, discernment sharpens. You begin noticing where money leaks, who drains your energy, and which habits no longer align with increase. This is not condemnation, it is calibration. Heaven is teaching you how to steward freedom. Here is the most important truth I learned after leaving the occult. Curses break in a moment, but mindsets transform in stages. If you rush this process, you risk rebuilding what God just tore down. Stay patient, stay grateful, stay obedient. The curse is gone. Now comes alignment. And alignment always precedes overflow. After February 7, 8, and 9, there is always a final test, and almost no one is warned about it. In the occult, we counted on this moment. not to reattach a curse, but to bait people back into agreement with fear, impatience, or compromise. Here's how it usually shows up. Right when you expect momentum, a small delay appears. A payment is late. An opportunity pauses. A person who once disappointed you resurfaces. This is not punishment. This is a choice point. Heaven is watching what language you use, what emotions you return to, and what decisions you make under pressure. If you panic, complain, or revert to survival thinking, you give the enemy something he didn't earn, permission through behavior. But if you stay calm, thankful, and disciplined, something powerful happens. The delay collapses, provision reroutes, what was held back accelerates. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times from both sides. Financial release is not blocked by demons at this stage. It's filtered by character. God is checking whether you will steward increase differently than you handled lack. This is why wisdom matters now more than prayer. Watch your spending. Guard your words. Be selective with people. Don't announce your next move too early. Silence is a form of protection. Understand this clearly. You are no longer fighting a curse. You are qualifying for trust. And when trust is established, overflow doesn't trickle. It arrives with force.